Today we have with us Malik Yoba and Sergio Morales, both icons in their own respective fields. Sergio in his career as a brand strategist and business consultant, and Malik as an actor. These two came together to create Iconic 32, a lifestyle company plus innovation studio that consults individuals, corporations, and community organizations around branding and strategy for social good. In other words, using pop culture to drive social good, where pop stands for person of purpose. Nose caught up with these two to learn a lot more about their approach to business, because I'm pretty sure I lost you all just now.
You guys are two icons in your own fields, you and acting, you and the brand person with this. How did the two of you meet up and partner?
How did we meet up and partner?
Yeah.
He was stalking me, bastard.
Yeah, social media is awesome for stalking.
Like, who's this weirdo? No, we actually met at a party, at a holiday party.
Okay.
And the end of 2013, we're introduced to a mutual friend who thought we should talk and had mutual interests in working with brands and creating content and in general just wanting to contribute something positive to the world. And so we started talking and we had breakfast the next day, and that was almost 2.5 years ago. It's been rocking ever since.
I'll share my account through my lens. It was very interesting. So we met at a Bravo media party. A lot of people there. It was noisy. And you know how people are these days. Short attention span. It's very hard to get people to actually look you in the eye. We were talking amongst a very noisy group of hundreds of people, maybe. It was dark, but we had a very deep conversation. And it's like you meet, especially someone who is a celebrity or a public figure, they're out and about, it's hard to get their attention. Malik reminds me of like President Clinton in that way, in that when you meet him and he
I did not have sex with that woman.
Then not inhale. You feel the attention and you feel the respect, and I respected that about him, and so we had this really interesting conversation. I left off, very intrigued by his brain and him as a person, and then, as I said, then we had breakfast. It just evolved from there, made sense. He had experience in the digital space and branding space, and we wanted to use pop culture to drive social good, and so we also shared the social good DNA, and so the formula just kind of made sense.
How did creativity come into the fold? Like, how did creativity become the main focus or the launching pad for what you guys were doing?
I mean, well, creativity was one of the sort of anchors that we were using to get our message out. But it's not necessarily like the core of the company. The core is, to do incredible stuff, to drive social good, and to reach young audiences. Obviously, creativity fuels growth and progress and new ideas. So, I mean, that's just, I think, part of our company's DNA. But at the time, it was also, we were going out and selling fashion items, and we had a shirt that said, "I pledge allegiance to creativity," and so that's why creativity was at the forefront. But creativity is there whether we talk about it or not. It's just part of our corporate culture.
In terms of working together, right? You both have different backgrounds and you bring different things to the table. So how did you decide who would do what and what role each person would play? And you also have a lot of other partners. You have like 2 other partners.
Right.
So how does that work together in terms of decision making?
It was interesting. I think we, through talking about what you care about and what your experience is, I think we realized that, one, we thought a lot alike. We had a very similar work ethic. And whatever the circumstance that arose, whether it was, printing a t-shirt in the early days, it's like, okay, let's get the message out and push this whole I pledge allegiance to creativity thing, right? The first event we did, which was probably 3 4 months after we met, we just brought people into a space, a showroom here in New York, a fashion showroom, to do a photo shoot, videotape people, just about their ideas around creativity, right? So as the first kind of thing we did, it was a very organic process. Okay, you know this person, you have this skill set. It just kind of happened, you know. Sergio, as a creative director and working in marketing, had a lot of experience in putting decks together. I've also had my experience. I personally never physically put them together, but I've always contributed to the content, the images, all that kind of stuff. So we just quickly found, you know, we brought to the table what we do, and it was very, very organic. You know, it was some of the early times I remember when we would talk, just getting to know each other. We were always very respectful. Like if we would talk, we were very respectful not to interrupt each other. Like, I'm sorry. It was an interesting dance, just kind of getting to know each other. And we just started putting tasks before us. You know, initially, you know, Serge's last 8 years in corporate America before he left his job was around corporate social responsibility and working with brands around that. I've always done that through my work, not just as an entertainer, but my work in community, working with kids. It's always been around community involvement, young people, empowerment, self-esteem building, diversity. So as an artist, I've always been driven to use art as an agent of change, right? And so we looked at, you know, what can we do? Like, so we can chase business, right? Knock on the door, cold call, work through pre-existing relationships to try to identify where companies are working on their social responsibility and help them around marketing and strategy. That proved to be a bit more challenging than we would have liked in the beginning. So the other piece of the business, we said, well, we can create experiences. We can produce events essentially and sort of bring our company ideas to life, right? We exist at the intersection of pop culture with a mission to promote social good. So by creating events, you can bring people into a space from different pop culture codes, fashion, tech, music, art. You can create events, you can do them as charities, which is one of the second big event we did. We did with Common, you know, the rapper. You, of course, did the artwork for our flyer, which was beautiful. But it was a celebration of creativity and the role that that played in people's lives, whether they were fashion, tech, music, art, in that case, politics, education. You know, we just brought people into a space to talk about that. It turned out that it was also Common's release date for his album, so there was an impromptu concert, there was art auction going on, there was, you know, the partnership we did with Bucket Feet, the sneaker company, so some sneakers and other merchandise was sold, and so we just kind of grew from there.
How you've talked about a lot of different things, a lot of different, I guess, aspects of your business. How do you decide which events to do or which companies to partner with, or like how do you do that and still manage to maintain or stick to your focus so you're not diverging, but whatever you're doing is still working towards your goal?
It's all planning. You know, it's just planning and figuring out which is more significant, putting timelines on those, and then being able to activate against, okay, we know we need to get you know, an event accomplished by October, like our Pop Culture Summit last year. That was sort of our big event of the year, so we knew that we were mapping against that, and we had an entire workflow just around that. And then if it was something else, we have an entire workflow around that thing and figuring out how to get A, B, and C done, whatever those items are. So, but it's funny because at the beginning too, we talked about being a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, where you have many different tools and weapons to accomplish the mission at hand. So it's always sticking to the mission at hand. Does it actually accomplish what the mission of the company is? And if it does, then we put it into the planning phase, and then we figure out which one of these are we going to activate. So one, raise brand awareness, and obviously two, to make some money to keep the company growing.
But by no means is it easy. I mean, we both suffer from ADD, but in the best possible way. Like, as a kid, my father always said you have to focus. You gotta focus, yes. And that never made sense to me because it just felt like a general command. But I looked at it like I played football, baseball, basketball. I raced BMX. I was on the swim team at one point. I was in a school band. I was in a band after school. I was in a drama club. I had a paper route. I worked in the store once a week. And I'm talking from the time I was like, 8 years. I had a paper route from 8 years old to 16. And then from that time to 16, when he kicked me out of the house, I actually did all those things. And as a kid, I would say to myself, I am focused. I'm focused on what I'm doing when I'm doing it. And when I'm not doing that thing, I'm focused on the next thing. And so it's interesting how we grow up. Even way before I met Serge, I remember Martha Stewart, they printed her schedule in the New York Times. And so people say, well, how does this woman have a TV show and she does product development and she got a magazine? But when they printed her schedule, you saw, okay, Monday from this time to this time, she's doing this. And if you think about when you go to school, you don't just study one subject, you're studying math and science. And so as an adult, some of us actually have the capacity to do multiple things at the same time, as long as you're consistent. And I think in some ways the truer answer to your question is sometimes circumstances dictate what we do first. We may think we're going in this direction, but an opportunity can come up and go, hold on, we need to pivot and now focus on this. And at this stage, 2 years into the company, we have not been profitable yet. We've made some money. This year, we're definitely starting off making more money in the month of January than we might have made all of last year, or close to that, maybe, right? Or might have equaled it. And so that's a positive sign that all of this activity, or random activity, if you will, which isn't random, it's very deliberate, is yielding a return. Because we look at money also as a return of energy, not just like paper. But when you commit to something, so the big idea that we've committed to is we're going to use pop culture to drive social good. It's a very, very broad statement. How can we do that? Well, we can do that through branding strategy, marketing initiatives, working with corporations, right, and brands. We can do it through experiential, so creating moments in time. And the other way we can do it is through creating content like this and e-commerce. So the first two we've done more experiential than anything, getting more opportunities through branding and strategy work, which is really where he comes from. We're doing that, right? Although I've always thought that way and had an opportunity to do some things in that space, but not full time. The third piece is the e-commerce and content, which is a harder thing to manifest. So we just the thing that I think we both appreciate about each other is that we just like to work hard, and we're consistent and we're resilient. And that's a gift from God, truly, to be a person that you don't even know, and then just go to work with them. With initially just on faith, like, all right, you get down like I get down, and you keep proving to each other, oh man, this dude's sending me emails at 3 in the morning. I'm up too doing stuff, and so we're finding our groove as we go along. And there's some other partners, but we do most of the day-to-day together.
Yeah, and I would add too, I think I was a little delusional coming out of corporate America. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to build a company and we're going to rock. 6 months will be good. But you learn to realize that it takes a lot more time and energy and struggle to get to a point where finally it's like, oh man, we've clicked out of neutral, we're in first gear now. But as Malik mentioned, like, we're starting to see those rewards come to life, and it just feels amazing. And for me, it's like we never rest. We're always working, and the fact that we see one reward doesn't make us chill and sit back and relax. It's like, all right, we know we can get more, so we continue. I'm in overdrive. I've been, I've never worked so hard in my life. In the agency world, you work around the clock, but you get some time off.
But you also know you got to check every.
And you got to check every 2 weeks. When you're not getting a steady paycheck in the bank every 2 weeks, until that starts to happen, you got to work, you got to struggle. And I don't think it'll stop when the checks keep coming.
We can. And I think one of the things that I think has been a good balance is I've made a living as an actor for over 2 decades. I never know where the check is coming from. I haven't been blessed like some actors I know. Yeah, man, I got movies lined up for the next 2 years. That ain't me. I'm always like, so, I've said to him many, many times, I never know where it's coming from. And so, as an actor, you're the CEO of You Incorporated. And you have to approach your life very much like an entrepreneur. And as much as it's about that phone ringing and there's either an audition, right, that comes, or hey, you got an offer to do such and such, which fortunately at this point in my career there's a good amount of that as well. You don't know where it's coming, so you still have to work on these other things. And I've always worked on other things besides acting. This company has allowed me to be very, very focused and very specific on what I'm working on. So even if some of those other things I was doing before, like creating content for brands, I do a lot of motivational speaking, hosting, I do theater, I do music, I do voiceovers. And so now I have an opportunity to sort of do everything through this lens. As a for instance, yesterday I was at a meeting for a community organization that is the largest provider of support for domestic abuse for women and children. They've been doing this for 30-something years. They recently got a grant from the federal government to address trauma as it relates to men, particularly men of color. And they want to provide services for men of color, understanding that the challenge is most men who experience either getting into a street fight, getting shot, getting mugged, getting jumped, getting beat by their woman, because that does happen, kicked and raped, these things happen. Men tend to not think of these things as trauma. They tend to not think that they need help. I'm not, because a lot of times, if I'm going to get help, that comes with a police report. Well, I'm not going to do the police report, right? So I'm sitting around this meeting of 20-something people, all service providers from all over New York City, and they're talking about how they're going to begin to get this message out. And I sat with the group that's focusing on outreach and engagement. And because I also come from the nonprofit world, I know how hard it is to get the attention of people when you're trying to do good work that isn't sexy. And so I'm listening to them, and they said, well, are you going to come back to the next meeting, or what are you going to do? We know you're busy. I said, I will give you my word that I'll commit time to this. But I can only look at it through the lens of what we do. And at the end I said, what I know I can contribute is a creative way to get this out. Like, we can focus on the content and the storytelling. Because as great as the work is, one, if you're not reaching people where they are, and if you're not giving it to them in a way that they can receive it, and in the world we live in right now, this camera is very powerful. We can create content that can go out there in many different ways to help get that message out, to let people know that this important service is there. And that's just one example of how we work and everything that we do. We tend to start looking at it through this lens. I have an opportunity recently to direct a film that came through his relationships. Same thing. So it's a film that is like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's an Italian-American family. No one in the world would have ever thought a black dude's going to be directing a film about an Italian-American family. But again, because of the relationships that we have, it comes through this platform. And we can kind of put our spin on it. Not just from a directing standpoint, but when it comes time to marketing, promoting the film, casting it, you know what I mean? So, And that's another example of, we're going along. I wasn't thinking about directing that film, but the opportunity came, and we took advantage of it. And that's what you just have to move. You have to take action. You have to be resilient. You have to be consistent, even when you don't see where the results are going to come from. Always keeping in mind this big idea. We are committed to using pop culture to promote social good. Not a new idea, but don't really know anyone who has started a company squarely focused on that in that way.
Okay, I have, I guess, two follow-up questions. The first one is, how do you balance the time with putting everything to the business? And then I know for you, like family life and you acting in your family, how does that work? Second question is kind of two questions in one. What has been the best point and the highest and lowest point in the 1 year you've been working together? And what is the vision going forward for where do you see it?
Those are three questions.
I know, that's why I said the second one. It's 2 in 1. Come on, guys, give me a break.
Honestly, I'll start with the balance. For me, it's actually been easier as an entrepreneur because...
Oh, a balance? I think I gotta go. See ya!
But honestly, like in corporate America, you've worked, at an agency before. It's an assembly line. It's like literally your soul is clocking in, and then you're clocking out, and then when you clock out, you're still on the clock. Or there's cultures. I'm a little bit older than you are, but in the late '90s, early 2000s, like you were judged by whether you were sitting at your desk or not, and what time you left. So those are very broad parameters. It's not like, are you actually producing good work? Are you actually motivating the team? Are you mentoring other people? Are you growing business? So as an entrepreneur with a family, it's just much easier, because we're always on, we're always working, and we're able to be flexible, with our schedule. So for me, it's literally, it's much easier. We work weekends, but again, it doesn't matter because we can do it from our home office. We can, meet somewhere and get work done. So there's a lot of work there. There's no question. There's a lot of responsibilities. But if you love what you do, which is an old cliche, then you're cool with it. Like I'm totally cool with dedicating whatever amount of time I need to because I truly love what we're doing as an organization. So for me, it's not balance is just sort of figuring it out, but it's a more pleasurable activity now than it was in corporate America.
I think I'm still working hard to find the balance. He's married and has kids at home. I'm divorced and my kids are with me. Fortunately, I have very supportive exes. I have 2 exes that I have kids with. Tonight my daughter has a concert at school. I'll be there tomorrow. My son's got a golf program and I'll be there to participate and pick him up. So, definitely try to use the flexibility he talks about wisely. And then also, my kids are teenagers, and so we are focusing on millennials. So my oldest is just entering that stage. Looking to incorporate them into this work somehow. They are creative young people, and are very much aware of this is about legacy building. This is about not sitting around waiting on someone to give you an opportunity, but to create the opportunity. And that's where the biggest message I think has to come from what you want to do with your magazine and for what we're doing is that it's not sitting around waiting. And I've always said that even as an actor. My father always said, build your own generator so when you turn off the power, you still have lights. He repeated that over and over and over again. So I've always been wired that way. Like, how am I going to get this hustle? Even when I'm doing movies, I remember doing the Tyler Perry movie, and we were filming we were doing an exterior scene, but they were holding the cast inside of a building as we waited to shoot. Now, walking around the building, I was like, it's a very creative space. It felt like it was some sort of agency or something. I found it was an ad agency. And I literally told the PA, the production assistant, who was like trying to hold me where everybody else was, I said, where are you going? I I said, there's a check in here and I'm gonna get it. When Tyler's ready, he called me. That being nosy, I walked into a meeting and they were fans, so they were just excited to see me, but I ended up contributing to the meeting. And then they invited me to a subsequent meeting. That relationship yielded over $100,000 just by claiming it, saying I'm gonna get this. And so I think that that's part of the balance too, is like knowing that every day you have to claim it, that you're gonna do it and get it. Even if, like I said, you don't know where it's going from, and just keep working. And part of that is educating our kids along the way and getting the support. And sometimes I might have to encourage his wife, like, look, he's doing a good thing. I know that because it's not easy. Like this is the hardest thing for any of us, for both of us. And I think that we suffer for it too. Like we need to be clear. Like this isn't we wake up every day feeling great. Sometimes we have to encourage each other. We never give up, but it'll be like, yo, I need a moment. Like pray in the middle of the day, just stop everything, meditate, and truly believe that this is something that is also divinely guided. This isn't about ego, it's about service, it's about purpose. When you move on service and purpose, in my experience as a creative person who's only made money as an adult, I think creativity and art and acting and have to continue to believe that even when it gets hard. And it's a hard time right now too. As exciting as it is, it's also very, very hard.
I guess he talked a little bit about some of the low points in your second question. So I'll just comment on, I don't think there's one low point. I think it's just a series of ups and downs as an entrepreneur. And I think it's important, like for the audience that you want to reach, who might want to make money on the side or be entrepreneurs, like, I read somewhere, like, as an entrepreneur, no one is ever on your time because you always want things to move quicker than they actually do. So for me, that's been the low moments, is that you put so much energy and work into something, and then because you're not a Nike yet, or you're not a Google yet, it might take longer to reach someone, or it might take longer for someone to answer the phone or email you back, and they don't know who you are, they don't know who your brand is yet, and you can certainly continue to promote your brand, but again, there's always, as a startup, there is that point in time where it's like you're just pushing and pushing and pushing, and you don't see the results, but you know that you have to keep going. So that's sort of like, I would say that's the biggest, challenge in terms of being an entrepreneur. It's just the amount of time it takes, to get for something to come to fruition. The high points, I think, are just moments in time where you randomly engage with people, or they've heard about you, and they say like, wow, like that company, like what you guys are doing is fucking awesome. It's changed the way I think. It's impacted me. Like that's why we exist. Like we curate progress. That's our tagline. Curators of progress, and to be able to help someone so that they actually progress in their lives or their business. That's an amazing feeling. So it's, Malik said, it's not ego-driven. Yes, we want to make money, but it's not about money. It's about purpose, and it's about helping people. And when you actually meet people, and it's not planned, and it's serendipitous, that feels amazing.
So to my third question, what's the vision for in the next 5 years? What do you hope to do? I read somewhere you said you guys are like Google.
The other thing you would start saying after?
We're a lifestyle firm, and you show up everywhere in your life. So, I think that we want to just continue to build on what we've started. So, definitely we want to continue to scale the strategy and the branding and consulting business, which is at this point a little bit more chasing, although now folks are starting to come to us and say, hey, here's a business challenge, can you help us with that? So definitely want to do more experiential. We talk about the Pop Culture Summit, and for us, the pop and pop culture is personal purpose. And right now, people don't really know what that is. We did 1 year for me. The highlight to date was the last year's summit, because that was the largest event we did. It took the longest planning, and it was incredible. And we're doing year 2. And that's something that we can certainly scale to the level of like the South by Southwest Music Festival, Film and Tech Festival that happens here in the States. We started with 300 people, actually about 350, maybe a little more. So today, 30 years ago, now you can have 50, 60, 100,000 people at that thing. And we believe we can scale that. And then on the content and commerce side, definitely continue to build out iconic32.com to be a strong digital media presence, and also a platform and a marketplace for e-commerce. And we use that tagline, Curators of Progress, seriously, because I think the goal is to have that marketplace kind of be like an Amazon, but of companies that really do stand for something that matters. You know, with all due respect to Amazon, it's a great business model, clearly, that's working. But it's just consumerism. Buy this for as cheap as possible. And the downside of that is, obviously, it's put a lot of small mom and pops out of business. And the Barnes and Nobles have gone away and that kind of thing. And it's just the nature of the evolution of business. But we want to really stand strongly in those 3 pillars, you know, firmly. And I think, you know, when we start making the type of money that we have been used to from these other areas in our life before we did this, I think we can breathe a little bit better. But I think that we just want to continue to work and build an iconic brand that can outlive us, which would be amazing.
Yeah, I would add too, like the vision is to become the household name where people, whether they're brands or if they want to do a film or a digital property, or they want to sell an e-commerce platform, they know Iconic 32 is the household brand that delivers cool and delivers social good. So those 2 things should not be separate. You know, it's not, if you're good, it's not cool, and if you're cool, you don't do good. Those 2, that's what we want to do, is just really bring to life the fusion of those 2 things. It's that, you know, they are intrinsic, and the way the world is evolving, you know, the younger generations obviously will take over. You know, so just having that formula as, you know, a benchmark is something that's really important to us. Like the Industrial Revolution, as you know, baby boomers and older folks, they were raised in a completely different mindset. For them, it was just like, sell as much as you can. Like, that was it. There was no, it didn't matter, environmental never mattered. Like, it was a dog-eat-dog world. Not that it still isn't and it still shouldn't be, but there's such a thing as a collective economy now. Like, business is changing so quickly, and we're changing right along with it, because we're so flexible that's what we need to do. Like, we need to be the household name for the intersection of pop culture and social good, because that's where the world is headed.
Last question, because I know you have to go. Do you have any advice for someone in Africa who's trying to start a business and is, wondering, is this the right move to make? How do I go about this? How do I feed my family or take care of my bills and stuff like that? Do you have any just one piece of advice?
I think, having been to Africa a few times and going back, I'm involved with something called the African Angels Network, which was started by a friend of mine who's from Soweto, grew up dirt poor, who ended up going to Oxford, I think he might have been at the time at Harvard, went to Wall Street, made a lot of money, quit at 33 years old to go back to start the African Angels Network, not just to invest money in young creatives across the continent. I don't believe he has anything yet in Ghana, but certainly Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, supporting many different businesses, knowing that there's a rise of creative capital happening on the continent. There are people like yourself who have spent time abroad or coming back with skill sets to develop the country. Africa is the last frontier in so many ways. We know the Chinese are big up in Africa, obviously the Dutch and the Germans and the French and everyone, the Portuguese, everyone has raped and pillaged the continent. but I think that there's still tremendous amounts of creativity. I worked with John DeMillo, the Ghanaian actor, on a Nollywood film. I just think that people should know that the world is looking at Africa. African Americans are looking at Africa. A bunch of my friends have moved there to start businesses. And I just think that don't believe it's not possible just because you can't see the end of the road. You know? And know that everything from this camera to this wall to this table to this iPhone, the shirt, everything started as an idea from someone else. So if they can do it, so can you.
Yeah. I mean, I would add to that too. I oftentimes, now that I've been an entrepreneur, like full-blown entrepreneur, I think you truly find out who you are and how much passion you have inside of you when your back is against the wall. And the one thing I would say is just, you can prepare, and it's important to prepare, but it's also important to actually start doing it and figuring it out, because it's never going to be as you imagine it on paper. You know, you write a business plan, or you write, you know, a plan of this is what's going to happen, and it always goes like this. It's a line that's like this, and then you sort of figure it out and you learn along the way. I've been saying something lately, like there's so much beauty and knowledge in the hustle and the struggle, which is absolutely true. Like the things that we have found out about each other and about the world, it's only because we put ourselves in this position. So
It's an uncomfortable position.
and it's a very uncomfortable position. Again, because it's an unknown. But that's how, to Malik's point about the phone, or you know, any great sort of idea or invention, it was unknown before it was known. You know, if you think about that, it's like before there was an airplane, there was no airplane. And someone came up with that idea, and it was rejected, and it sucked, and it failed, and it was hard, and it was sure there was a lot of blood and sweat and tears and financial loss. But look at what we have now, and I truly feel like as humans, we've only just scratched the surface. And I believe now with technology and people being able to connect quickly across the world, it doesn't matter if you're in Africa or South America. I feel like every person has an opportunity to actually contribute something to society. It doesn't have to be the next iPhone, but there are things that could be done from an entrepreneurial standpoint that pushes the agenda forward.
And start with a need. You know, look around you. What's needed, and fill that gap, you know, and don't stop. And now with the internet, there's not a question you can ask, pretty much, that you can't find an answer to somewhere online. If you have access to a computer, you have access to information. If you have access to information, you have access to resources and people. And the other thing is just don't give up. Never, ever, ever give up. That's the only way you really fail, is when you give up. Got it?